So everybody wants to get into a premium company. So you're in a premium company interview round, and the interviewer asks question, this is the something that is we are building. So which architecture do you propose? You want to go us with a monolithic, micro frontend, monorepo? Which architecture do you prefer? I am like, what the hell? Mono front end, micro front end, monolithic. I don't know. And still I want to get placed into a very premium company. So if you want to get into premium company, you should learn the architecture as one of your fundamental skill set. Hello all, welcome back to Uncommon Geeks. Myself, Vasant. I hope you all doing well. In case if you see me first time on the internet, I'm a content creator. I help people to clear their interview. I've made a lot of beautiful series in the past, which has been appreciated by many. So in case if you have not watched my previous series, those series will be available somewhere on the screen, also in the description section. Please go ahead and watch. If you're preparing for any sort of interview, definitely it will be beneficial for you. Now, without wasting further time, let's get started into this video topic that is very, very important. Leave the part of interview preparation, other things. A very important aspect of software developer lifestyle is to architect a product. So coding is one part, correct? So coding part, like somebody product owner will give you requirement, or your manager will tell you some requirement and you do it. That is one part of engineering. So that is something you know what needs to be done and you do it. But very core skill of a developer is architecting. So how you're going to architect a product so that you will foolproof it. Like in future, you will get less problems from that product. So those are things very, very essential from software developer point of view. I mean, your responsibilities, and many don't spend a lot of time on learning this architecture. So this video is super important if you're applying for premium and semi-premium companies where they'll ask about one or the other architecture related questions. I'm gonna explain three very, very important architecturing concepts: monolithic, micro frontend, and monorepo. And I'll also give you examples which companies are using used architecture. And please watch the video till the end, because somewhere in the middle of the video I'm going to give you super important homework. This homework is not something that will create problem to you or will take a lot of your time, but it will create some intuitiveness in you, and it will start making you to think from the architectural point of view whenever you look at a product. Okay, so please watch the video till the end without skipping in middle. Let's get started. Yeah, so let's get started by the architecture. What are the different architecturing that exists for the front end and how it evolved, and what architectures are used by popular applications? All of that let us discuss one by one. Okay. Very first one is monolith. Okay, monolith, or what's it's also called monolithic architecture. It's one of the oldest form of architecture and it is still used in the industry. Correct. See, in the past there were not lot of importance that was given to the front end architecturing as such. Okay, so as a whole system there used to be some architecture and front end was considered to be a part of system. It was not considered a separate entity, so where there was not much of an importance. But now as the front end itself is becoming a very complicated system, there are a lot of architectures dedicated to front end. So I'm going to explain all of that, so watch the video till the end. So first is the monolith. So monolith architecture is traditional model of software program which is built as a unified unit that is self-contained and independent from other applications. Obviously, this definition is not mine. I taken it from the web. So in very simple words, I'll explain. For example, let's say first let us start with a backend example. Let's say you are interacting with a one backend system, your front end application, and the backend system has few entities. Like on one authentication module is there, and one module is for sending you settings details. One module is there for sending the core details. Let's say for example you're using a Paytm application. So as soon as you land in home screen, you have to show a lot of things like how much is my balance, notification count. So somebody is handling this entire thing, and there is some other team which is handling for of the flight booking. Somebody else is handling something. So if none of this is done, all this is put together as one system. Okay, there is no bifurcation. All these things are put together as one system. For example, let's say I work for the authentication team and I go ahead and modify certain things required in a common library which was required for me. Okay, and I'll just commit it, and somebody tomorrow comes and modify that common library and it will affect me because he is undoing my change, because that is hampering his. Not necessarily that this will happen everywhere, like you go ahead and change the common library and it will suddenly affect somebody. No, people will take some consent and then only do the change. But I'm just saying these are the things where a system is one big entity. There are no separations here. Okay, so which systems are using that? That's something that I'll discuss. So next slide is actually talks about advantages and disadvantages. Then we are going to micro frontend. But before that, I'll tell you what all the very big systems that are using monolithic. GitHub was still using the monolith architecture. Okay. So now you may question, wasn't if you're saying disadvantages, like there is a very big system, the deployment should happen all at once, and there are problems associated with that. How GitHub is using. See, all architecture comes with pros and cons, and somebody can just use the pros and or try to overcome the cons and build a system. Okay, but there are many systems like Netflix, Google, and Facebook. They all started their application with monolithic architecture because it is easy to start. Okay, but after a point they all struggle to scale, so due to which they all ended that architecture and they moved to separate architecture, which I'm going to discuss in a while. Okay, but systems like GitHub recently they are in a talk to migrate their backend to microservices and from UI to micro frontend. I'll explain micro frontend in a while. Okay, but most of the systems start as monolithic, where the entire system is one unit. Okay, and then they'll migrate it into a separate architecture whenever it grows. Okay, so pros and cons I've explained. Advantages: easier continuous development, correct? Because you there is no separated ownership. Like a guy from authentication team, if he has something to do with the home team, he can go fix and come back. Or like I said, from the home team they can go to common library, fix certain things and come back. So it's a very easier kind and continuous development, as there is only one system. Okay, and reduce latency. A lot of things happen faster here compared to one with a separated system. For example, let's say you are doing an authentication system and you want to interact with some system which is basically handling the user details, and that system team need to handle with some third party tools like Workday or some other payroll management tool which actually holds the employees information. So there's a three level of hierarchy to get one information, correct? So this system doesn't know which database this system is using, this system doesn't know what they are using, correct? So obviously this will add some latency. But if all these three are one, like you also query on table, he also query on table, they also query on same table, obviously it will be very faster, correct? So the reduced latency. Disadvantage also, difficulty in scaling. Like if everyone are doing everything, then it is quite difficult whenever the application becomes bigger. Second, simple in the beginning, difficult while scaling. Quite similar. Like for example, let's say you want to introduce a new team, where you put them, because you don't have a separation of concerns all put together as one big project, correct? So these are the disadvantages of monolithic. So most systems starts the monolithic and then they migrate into different systems. Okay, now before I go to the next system, first let me tell you something. So there is an architecture in the backend called microservices. I believe if you are not worked on it, if you're a front-end developer, but at least you might have heard it somewhere. Let me give you a quick overview what are microservices. So microservice is nothing but a big service. For example, now Netflix has some hundreds of services, correct? So these hundreds of services are divided into some modules. For example, now authentication module, and the module is responsible for video rendering and video display. Module responsible for streaming APIs. Module responsible for account handling, like which user details, personal details, all of that. So these different modules can be owned by different teams, correct? So that is known as microservice architecture. So where each team can leverage the advantages of different technologies. Like for example, one backend uses Java, one backend uses Python, one backend uses NoSQL, one backend uses SQL. This can be achieved with the help of the microservices. Okay, so influenced by this concept, UI also come up with an architecture called micro frontend. That is, I'm going to talk next. Okay, so here micro frontend, as you can see, there are four teams. For example, in the above example I had explained here, there is only one team called shop team in Monolith. Okay. Same shop team is divided into now four teams here, like team inspire, team search, team product, and team checkout. This is one product, but internally it has divided into four different parts. Okay. So now each of this part, so mission helps the customer to discover products, quickly find the right product, press the product, provide a good checkout experience. So now each of this team now independently working on certain modules. Okay. So now, for example, this team can use a Java as for the backend and React on the front end. And here the team search decide to use something else. Team product decide to use something else. Okay. So this will give a lot of flexibility whenever the application is going to bigger scale. Okay. The idea behind micro frontend is to think about a website or a web app as a composition of features which are owned by independent teams, Each team has a distinct area of business or mission it cares about and specializes in. So, like for example, they need not to use the same tech stack. They need not have a same vision or a mission. They all are like a act like a separate companies for inside one product. Okay, let me give you the most simplest example so that you understand it better. Okay, so So let's take up this example of Paytm. Okay, I am not 100% sure whether Paytm is using the micro frontend or not, but let's take a understand by taking this example. So you're seeing a mobile prepaid, mobile postpaid, electricity, pay, money transfer, passbook, all of it. Correct. So now there are so many different actions happen in each of this. For example, actions that happen after on click of electricity, you have to pay electricity bill, then it will list different electricity provider and you go enter your customer ID and all of that. So the flow is different. What happens on mobile prepaid, you select a different mobile operators and select a pack, etc. So the flow is different. Same goes for DTH, gas booking, etc. Correct. So on overall, all of this have a different kind of a flow. Correct. So how it might have done in the backend with the help of micro frontend is, so this mobile postpaid is owned by one team. So this electricity is owned by another team. This mobile prepaid is owned by another team. Okay. So how it is another team? Let's take an example. Every team is using an application of React Native. Okay. So this mobile prepaid is one React Native application. Mobile postpaid is one React Native application, or electricity is one React Native application. Native also you can take in the same way, and they are built in a separate GitHub repository. Okay, after they are built in a GitHub repository, you make a change to your individual product and you make the change. Then all these things are put in one container React Native app or container native application. For example, there are already three different apps. Okay, so they do something of their own, and there is one container app. Okay, where all of them come and sit in. Okay, now this container app could be again React Native or a native app. On click of this mobile, they load the bundle from that app where whichever you have built. So now mobile prepaid team has built one particular bundle from their GitHub repository. So on click of this mobile prepaid, you are redirecting user to that particular thing. So container apps responsibility here is where to redirect on click of each tab. Okay, that has been the micro frontend architecture on the UI, where there is one container app which will kind of encompass it all the things, and there are other mini apps or what I can also call like sub parts of the app which will be built separately and they'll be embedded into this container application. Yeah, hope you now you got a sense how micro frontends work. So one container app, different apps go and sit inside of that. Okay, so the advantage here, I'm going to explain that. So the examples are it is used in very popular apps like IKEA, Starbucks, Dyson, etc. What are the advantages of adopting different tech stack? I already mentioned. So some team uses Python's advantage on the backend. Some team uses the Java advantage on the backend. On the UI, if you say on the micro frontend side, it is not that easy. Like one product uses Angular, one product uses React, because ultimately this all of these individual blocks go and sit in a container app. So container app need to have the same dependency as that of the children app. Okay, so one is in Angular, one is in React. The build may become quite complicated. So generally the UI's tech stack will remain same, but the teams will develop them individually. Okay, and easy maintainability obviously. Then disadvantages, code duplication. You might have already guessed this. So let's say there are three React applications on the UI. Okay, so all the three are using now Axios as the package to make an API call, correct? And the way app A makes the network call, and the app the project B and the project B makes a network call with the help of Axios is same, correct? So now need not all the three projects need not to instantiate Axios and make a network call. This can be put in some library, correct? Obviously, Axios can be put in some library, but there are a lot of other things where the code reusability is not happening, but the code duplication is happening. Okay, so code duplication, now you get a sense whenever there's a code duplication and whenever the container application decides to make a code change, all the children has to make that change, correct? For example, now Axios 1.0 was used by all across. Some particular application needs 2.0. Now we cannot say if container has to support 2.0, all the other child application also need to support 2.0. So there's a code duplication, and every time whenever somebody requires a migration, everybody need to migrate it, correct? Extra effort in review and migration, that was the next point. So let's say everybody updated the package. Okay, what is there in the code review? Everybody has updated that version, but there is somebody who need to review that, and somebody need to approve. Again, it need to go to the build system. So for the same thing, for the same work, there's a development effort is wasted, review effort is wasted, build effort is wasted. Correct. So these are the problems that comes with a micro front end architecture, but micro front end architecture has a lot of advantages which can be ignored coming to the disadvantages. So micro front end is very beneficial whenever you are operating on a different geographical zones. Let's say, for example, one team is operating in India, one team operating in US, and one team operating in Europe. Let's say you are not following the micro front-end architecture and you are following whether monolithic, or there's another thing called monorepo, which I'm going to explain in a while. So there is a lot of overlap that will happen between all of you guys. Let's say now there is some shared library, correct, that need to be updated. Now all the thing has to put at some time and then do the updating operation. Now with a micro front end, you have an advantage, like you update your product and you inform others. You update your product and inform others. So there's going to be least effect. Correct. So micro front end is very useful whenever there are distributed systems. I'm distributed here as in your team is distributed all across the globe. So micro front end is very suitable for you. Okay. Now let's go to the next. So before I explain the next architecture, which is Monorepo, I think you are liking the content whatever I have made so far. And it takes a lot of effort to understand different systems and prepare this presentation and present it to you. So if you're liking the content, please like the video on my YouTube channel. Add comment, whatever you're thinking. Is it a good video? Mention. No, Vasan, this can be improved further. Add a comment. By more likes and comments, the video becomes visible to a lot of people, and there's a high chance they'll click on it and they get benefited. If more people view my video, my channel becomes popular. Like I always say, I have only noble cause of helping people to clear the interview. I'll achieve that much sooner. Okay, so please like and comment about the video before watching further. Thank you. Now let's get started with the next very popular architecture called Monorepo. Correct. Before I explain let me explain Monorepo and I'll give you small homework. So Monorepo architecture is quite similar to monolithic. Okay, let's read the definition first. A code management and architectural concept whereby you keep all isolated bits of code in one super repository instead of managing multiple smaller repositories. Micro frontend you got where you're managing multiple smaller repositories, correct? So electricity bill payment is one unit, flight booking is one unit, gas booking is one unit. So what backend, what frontend users, it's a separate, correct? Now, whereas monorepo is not like that. Monorepo is like one big chunk similar to monolithic. I'll tell the difference. Okay. First, let us see the example of who all using monorepo. Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Uber, Airbnb, Twitter. So a lot of big firms are basically using the monorepo architecture. Now let us understand what is monorepo very much in depth. So you're seeing one monorepo folder here. Then you have node modules, package.json. So there is one React app. Okay. This React app has its own node module, source, package.json. There is second React app. Okay. Again, it has its own things. There is one React Native app and there is one common library. Okay. So common library here is what? For example, a library that used for making network call, or library that is used for logging certain things, or library that is used for UI like buttons, animations, etc. So this common library is required for React to app 1, React app 2, and React Native app 1 also. Okay. So what we are doing is rather, see, let's say all these are now independent. Obviously, then what would have happened if all the apps are independent? There would have been a lot of code duplication happening all across. Correct. Now, like for example, now common project, whatever is here, that common project has to be published, and that common project source you will take into your project. Same way how you will take Axios, right? You will npm install Axios. Now you will be publishing your common library somewhere, correct? Like for example, your company xyz hyphen common library, you will add it to your package.json and get that common library. So every time when common library is updated, you need to take a new version and update. But here all the things are in same project, so you can just reference to that common library and use whatever you want. You don't have to wait for them to publish the version, correct? So then this is, in very simple words, is a monorepo. So let us go to the next. So this is very important. A lot of candidates get confused. What is the difference between monolithic and monorepo? Okay. What is monolithic? Entire source code of the project lies in one repository. Okay. Let's take a same example of Paytm or PhonePe, where entire application is in one repository. Okay, front end, back end, in front end, all the different modules, all that are there in one repository. Monorepo need not have only one repository. Monorepo, each meaningful unit can have a separate repository. For example, all the front end can have one repository, all the back end can have another repository. Correct? So in the front end, again, let's say it is becoming very, very big. For example, now let's take an example of Airbnb. Airbnb has two main entities. One, like a tourist who comes and books. One who owns a property. It's becoming very difficult to manage both in one. Then probably you can try to differentiate, separate them both, and make two different monorepos. Where again, this will have a lot of different modules, and this will have a lot of different modules. And another difference, entire application is deployed in one go. Individual projects can be deployed separately. It's possible here in the monorepo. Okay. For example, you saw, right? Have React app 1, React app 2, React native app 1. They all can be deployed separately. Like though they are all in same project and uses some similar dependencies, their deployment is not dependent on any other project. Okay. So which all popular projects are using? Google, Facebook, I already mentioned. All these popular companies are using monorepo. Okay. Now, monorepo libraries. So this is very, very important. Let's say now you have 10 different React apps under one folder. Okay. Now you have to let's say you make one change to the common folder. Like common is something that contains all the libraries, let's say like how to make API call, how to log. After you make change to the common library, you cannot just run the test case on common library and end your programming. Correct? Because that common library is used by this 10 React projects. So you have to make sure none of the test case of this 10 React projects is affected by the changes that you made for the common. So how you can do? You can go to React Native React.js project 1, run npm run test that. React Native project 2, npm run test. Same you can do for the 10 projects, correct? To make sure whatever the change you did from the common library hasn't affected any of them. But you already got the sense it is becoming complicated, correct? It's not about just running the test. There are a lot of activities, like for example, packing. Many uses web pack and other things for packing the project, correct? So you may have to do that. So there are a lot of activities, end-to-end testing, unit testing, all of that has to run across different projects at once. So there has to be some library which will give you this flexibility. So this can be achieved by different framework like NX, Rush, Lerna, Bazel, Build, PNPM. I very much prefer Lerna. This is something that I have used in the past. You can probably use the Rush also from Microsoft. If you're someone who is hearing the term for the first time and you want me to make a detailed video about Learn or Rush, please mention that in the comment section. I'll try to make a detailed video explaining these. Okay. So you at least you got a sense why Learn or Rush required. Different projects, updating certain things in common, you have to run a lot of test scripts on different projects individually. Rather doing that, you use some common place where you can do this for the entire project. Okay. So Monorepo pros and cons. Pros you already got, code and library you use. Like last also I explained, as a common library has to update it or a package has to update it. You don't need not to update everywhere. So once place you update and everyone will get it. Faster review, obviously there is no duplicate review happening for the same change. You will get to know what all changes happened. At a time we can see and we can approve or reject. Updating major dependencies linked to is super easy. Similar, like you update certain things in a common library, reflects for all. Cons, no way to restrict only to access to the certain parts of the app. This is very, very critical problem. For example, if you go and look at this diagram again, so here you have a package called common. Okay. So now we have, you own the React app 1. Actually, your team works only on the React app 1. You cannot just download the React app 1 and work. From the feature, they can allow you to only get access to React app 1, but you cannot just use React app 1. You also need a common library, correct? So eventually common library uses another common library or something like that. So you cannot just limit yourself to work you're doing. Your project size will be becomes bigger. Okay, because there will be a lot of entities which you have to make sure the entire project works fully. Too many packages lead to longer bootstrap time, obviously. So what happens is there are sometimes those certain things are not really required for your project because of some common things that you are using. A lot of packages get added into your project and the bootstrap becomes slower. Poor Git performance when working on a large scale product. So many so far in their entire lifetime they might have not faced this. What is poor Git performance is, let's say you have 10 files or typical React examples or React.js or Angular, where you don't check in Node.js, you only check in the source codes, correct? So that, let's say there are 50 files, 100 files, correct? And every time whenever you're doing a git push, it just compares the changes, etc., and it will show what all changed, correct? So this will not work the same way when you have GBs of data, correct? It becomes very, very difficult for Git protocol to understand where all the changes have happened and how to show the difference. So Google and Facebook have their own internal Git tools for this purpose, okay? But typical applications which are not having so much of files need not to have worry, but very big applications which have GBs of code itself might face problem with a Git. So if you are using Monorepo for a very big project, you should be ready to write your own source control like Git. Next, the code navigation is slightly slower. Developers are now opening individual package work around that. Quite now an issue, because you have so many, let's say 10 React apps, out of which 4 are libraries. So you have to go to that and see what all changes has done and then pick into your live project. So code navigation becomes quite slow, but obviously over a point of time you became adaptive to that, correct? So that's all about the entire thing that I want to explain, but let me quickly summarize. Before summarizing, I have a homework for you. Please tell me what framework that you think is used by the popular apps, React apps like Facebook. Okay, Facebook. Yeah. Before I summarize, please explain me what architectures are used by the popular applications like Redbus, Book My Show, and Mintra. Redbus, Book My Show, and Mintra. Analyze the project, analyze the look and feel how they might have done. What you think the architecture that they might be using, mention that in comment section. I'll correct you if you're right or wrong. So in case if you're not at all getting idea, try to go to the medium and look, have they written anything regarding that, and try to extract the knowledge and write. Okay. Now, let me quickly summarize the architecture that we discussed in the article. We have basically 3 architectures: monolithic, micro frontend, monorepo. Monolithic, everything in one. Micro frontend, each business concern is divided into separate unit. And monorepo, again, any meaningful unit is binded into one repository. Okay, each has its own advantages and disadvantages. Okay, now if in the interview they ask you which architecture you are going to pick, so weigh the pros and cons of each architecture and see what is suitable for the application that that they have asked. Okay, this is super important from the system design point of view. I'm going to publish system design interviews, system design concepts in upcoming videos. So before that, I thought, let me make my followers be aware of these concepts, because suddenly if I explain that, I may not get this much time to explain all the concepts, correct? So please practice this, analyze every time whenever you look at architecture, just think in your mind what architecture it could be. Okay, that's all about this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, please like the video on YouTube channel, add a comment whatever you felt. In case if you're not followed me on LinkedIn and Medium, please follow me. If you have very personal question that cannot be posted as a comment, you can ask me in LinkedIn. I'll try to answer that. And do not forget to subscribe to Uncommon Geeks, because I am coming up with a very, very super important system design question and answers. So I'll be designing very, very big system designs on the UI. So please press subscribe and press the bell icon so that you get notification at the right time as soon as I publish the video. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. And this particular PPT that I shared will be in my GitHub repository. You can download it for free. Okay. Link to that will be in the description section. Thank you so much for watching. Catch you in next video.